made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, along with some new partner nations, quietly started testing a new financial tool called the unit. It's not an app. It's not a crypto meme coin. It's a gold-backed digital currency meant for one main purpose: to reduce the world's reliance on the US dollar. Now, before you assume this is just another dramatic "the dollar is collapsing" story, let's look at what's actually happening. Around 90% of trade between Russia and China is now done without using US dollars. That's a huge shift. At the same time, US national debt has reached about $38 trillion. Whether you see that as manageable or worrying, it's a massive number. And behind the scenes, countries are slowly building a new system for global trade. To understand why this matters, we need to go back in time. After World War II, world leaders met at the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944. They decided to base the global financial system around the US dollar. At that time, the dollar was tied to gold, and the US economy was strong and stable. Even after the gold link ended in 1971, the dollar stayed at the center of global trade. Oil is priced in dollars. Countries hold dollars in their reserves. Big international deals usually happen in dollars. This gave the United States a major advantage. Because everyone needed dollars, the US could borrow money more easily and run large deficits without losing global trust. Economists sometimes call this an exorbitant privilege, but this power also came with influence. Since most international payments pass through dollar-based systems, the US can use financial tools like sanctions to pressure other countries. That became very clear in 2022 when Russia invaded Ukraine. Western countries froze around $300 billion of Russia's foreign reserves and cut several Russian banks off from SWIFT, the main global banking messaging network. For many nations watching from the sidelines, this was a wake-up call. They realized that if political tensions rise, access to the dollar system can be restricted. So some countries started asking a simple question: what if we had another option? That's where the unit comes in. Developed with help from the International Research Institute for Advanced Systems, IREAS, the unit is not meant to replace local currencies like the rupee or the yuan. People won't use it to buy groceries. Instead, it's designed for governments and big companies to settle international trade. Here's how it works. Instead of Brazil converting its currency into dollars and then into Russian rubles to buy oil, both sides could settle the deal using units. That means fewer steps, lower costs, and less need to use the US-controlled financial system. What makes the unit different is its backing. About 40% of it is tied to physical gold. The remaining 60% is linked to a mix of Brics member currencies. Gold has been trusted for thousands of years as a store of value. By combining gold with a basket of national currencies, Brics is trying to create something stable and less dependent on any one country. This move is part of a larger plan. Over the past few years, Brics countries have been building their own payment systems. China has CFS for cross-border yuan transactions. Russia created its own financial messaging network after facing sanctions. India's UPI system is expanding internationally. These systems are slowly being connected, forming a parallel network. On top of that, the new development bank, often seen as a Brics alternative to the World Bank, has increased lending in local currencies instead of dollars. The numbers show real change. Russia and China now conduct most of their trade in rubles and yuan. Within Brics, dollar use in trade has dropped significantly. This doesn't mean the dollar is disappearing tomorrow. But it does mean countries are building backup options. India's role is especially interesting. It has strong ties with both Western nations and Brics members. Indian officials have said the dollar still plays an important role in global stability. At the same time, India continues to explore non-dollar trade when it makes sense. Instead of openly challenging the system, India seems to be quietly preparing alternatives. The United States has responded with tough language. Former President Donald Trump has suggested heavy tariffs on countries that try to move away from the dollar. The idea is simple: make it expensive to abandon the dollar system. That might slow things down in the short term. But it also shows how serious the issue has become. None of this guarantees the end of the dollar. The US still has the largest economy in the world, deep financial markets, and strong global influence. Replacing the dollar at the center of global finance would take years, maybe decades. Trust and stability don't shift overnight. But something important is changing. For the first time in decades, a serious effort is underway to create a parallel system for global trade, one that doesn't rely entirely on the United States. The dollar isn't collapsing. It's being challenged. And whether that challenge grows or fades will shape the next chapter of the global economy.
Because these banking reformations will impact the entire world, the IMF, World Bank, and other countries had to be involved. The reformations require that the Federal Reserve be absorbed by the U.S. Treasury Department, and the bank's fraudulent activities must be stopped and payment must be made for past harm. In 1998, the military generals who originally participated in the farmer claims process realized that the U.S. Supreme Court justices had no intentions of implementing the accords, so they decided the only way to implement the reformations was through a law passed by Congress. In 1999, a 75-page document known as the National Economic Security and Reformation Act was submitted to Congress, where it sat with little action for almost a year. Late one evening, on March 9, 2000, a written quorum call was hand-delivered by Delta Force and Navy SEALs to 15 members of the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House, who were sponsors and co-sponsors of NESARA. They were immediately escorted by the Delta Force and Navy SEALs to their respective voting chambers, where they passed the National Economic Security and Reformation Act. These 15 members of Congress were the only people lawfully allowed to hold office in accordance with the original 13th Amendment. Remember, British soldiers destroyed copies of the Titles of Nobility Amendment in the War of 1812 because it prevented anyone who had ties to the Crown of England from holding public office. NESARA is the most groundbreaking reformation to sweep not only this country, but our planet in its entire history. The Act does away with the Federal Reserve Bank, the IRS, the shadow government, and much, much more. NESARA implements the following changes. Zeroes out all credit card, mortgage, and other bank debt due to illegal banking and government activities. This is the Federal Reserve's worst nightmare, a jubilee or a forgiveness of debt. Abolishes the income tax, abolishes the IRS. Employees of the IRS will be transferred into the U.S. Treasury National Sales Tax Area. Creates a 14% flat rate non-essential new items only sales tax revenue for the government. In other words, food and medicine will not be taxed, nor will used items such as old homes. Increases benefits to senior citizens. Returns constitutional law to all courts and legal matters. Reinstates the original Title of Nobility Amendment. Hundreds of thousands of Americans under the control of foreign powers will lose their citizenship, be deported to other countries, and barred from re-entry for the remainder of their life. And millions of people will soon discover their college degrees are now worthless paper. Establishes new presidential and congressional elections within 120 days after NESARA's announcement. The interim government will cancel all national emergencies and return us back to constitutional law. Monitors elections and prevents illegal election activities of special interest groups. Creates a new U.S. Treasury rainbow currency backed by gold, silver, and platinum precious metals, ending the bankruptcy of the United States, initiated by Franklin Roosevelt in 1933. Forbids the sale of American birth certificate records as chattel property bonds by the U.S. Department of Transportation. Initiates new U.S. Treasury bank system in alignment with constitutional law. Eliminates the Federal Reserve System. During the transition period, the Federal Reserve will be allowed to operate side by side of the U.S. Treasury for 1 year in order to remove all Federal Reserve notes from the money supply. Restores financial privacy. Retrains all judges and attorneys in constitutional law. Ceases all aggressive U.S. government military actions worldwide. Establishes peace throughout the world. Releases enormous sums of money for humanitarian purposes. Enables the release of over 6,000 patents of suppressed technologies that are being withheld from the public under the guise of national security, including free energy devices, anti-gravity, and sonic healing machines.
With ISO 2022 and Tier 4B, the new global financial system is already here.
This is out there, so this is real. Whether you want to believe it or not you, but people want to believe it or not, that's fine. It doesn't really matter. It's moving ahead. And when they say nothing can stop what's coming, nothing can stop what's coming. The forces at play are beyond the Masonic filth's comprehension.
Right, okay, got some juicy intel for you. So we know obviously the ISO 20022 digital payment system that's on XRP and XLM. So the Stellar blockchain went live on Monday. We know this. So all banks are transitioning over. This literally means that they have now moved away from the old Cabal SWIFT system. Everything has been switched over. This is across 200 countries and 11,000 institutions. It fully goes live on March the 23rd. So we are currently going through the days of everything switching over to the new quantum financial system and away from the fiat SWIFT system. So they have completely lost. And they have also confirmed that the CBDC has been disconnected from the quantum financial system, from the blockchain. So CBDC has failed again. So don't worry about it, just completely ignore it. We're already past that phase now. So it's absolutely fantastic news. I have another great bit of news for my Australian followers as well that have been asking the questions. Is it live in Australia? It certainly is. It's switched over on Monday. There's a lot of great posts flying about it at the minute, so it definitely went live. Unfortunately for my Canada followers that have been asking the question, it hasn't been confirmed there yet, so as soon as I find out more, I shall post. But yeah, across 200 countries it went live. We have now switched over from the fiat SWIFT system. That's gone bye-bye. We are now on the quantum financial system. They have also said, though, as I've been saying, expect a bit of downtime where ATMs won't work and obviously banks are inaccessible. So just make sure you've got some cash at home. Remember, it's a short period of time. They are saying, look, just to be on the safe side, could be 2, could be a week, could be 2, could be 3, could be 4 weeks. So just be prepared for a short period of time while we transition over. The internet may also go down, so be prepared, because we will be migrating from the current internet through to the quantum servers, just as the banking system has. So our internet will be, as I've said on previous videos, on the quantum internet, which is blockchain internet, completely unhackable. Everything is moving. You cannot deny this now. It's all happening around you. You will see more stuff about banks collapsing. That's just the remaining of the old fiat system collapsing. But we are on the huge milestone now, so get ready. They are saying there's still going to potentially be some big events, so keep an eye out. So there could be a massive arrest on the horizon, which finalizes everything off.
So we do now know that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, of course, former Prince Andrew, has been arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. This is according to the police. We've just received this statement. It comes just after we heard that police had arrived at the home of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and that the police had been previously assessing evidence in relation to revelations in the so-called Epstein files. Now, what do we know so far? It has been a tumultuous few months, of course, for former Prince Andrew. He has been pushed out of the monarch's estate, essentially shoved into Sandringham, where he has lost all of his royal titles as well since last year, stripped of those royal titles by his brother King Charles. An anti-monarchy group filed a complaint against him after the most recent trove of documents was released, accusing him of violating his role as a trade envoy for the UK by sending secrets, by sending state information, by sending details of economic packages that Britain was working on to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Mr. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has denied any wrongdoing, but these are absolutely extraordinary events for someone of this title, someone of this status, the brother of King Charles, to right now be arrested. Again, we are waiting for more information, but we also know that King Charles had previously said he is willing to work with the police if it comes to that, and it has clearly come to that moment.
Clearance, the US military once had access to a device called Project Looking Glass, a technology that could supposedly view potential future timelines.
The project was shut down because there was a problem when we approached 2012. The timelines converge on that point in time. When you note how string theory works and how the possibility of possibilities works and how making one choice over here doesn't necessarily mean that the other choice couldn't exist at the same time. But once you get your brain wrapped around this subject, you find out that at the end of 2012, in an easy way to put it, the choices that we make become less and less consequential to the future. And eventually we're pushed into this bottleneck of time, no matter which choice we make.
Okay, so is that certainly 2012 in your understanding?
It's well coincides with December 21st, 2012.
So at that point, all possibilities lead to the same
Timelines.
Rubicon.
All possible timelines lead to the same basic set of history in the future.
And after that, they shut it all down. Now ask yourself, why would a system like that be buried, and what exactly did they see? Because this isn't just about false memories or tech. It might explain why everything since 1999 feels frozen and artificial, like we're on rails in a version of reality that wasn't meant to last this long. And if you think that's wild, wait until you hear what else Looking Glass may have revealed. So what exactly did they see with Looking Glass? According to multiple whistleblowers, including Bill Wood and other interviewed by Project Camelot, every time they ran the device, no matter what variables they changed, all future timelines converged to a single fixed point. That point, somewhere between 2012 and 2016. After that, the future became unpredictable. No more branching outcomes, just a wall.
So it's super interesting that they couldn't see beyond 2012, or rather they could see beyond 2012, but maybe things became inevitable. That was backed up, by the way, by a lot of different things. Mayan civilization, the calendar, remember that whole scare? Why doesn't the calendar go beyond? So you arrive at this point and you wonder, what is this, right? Suddenly these people who are evil are no longer allowed or able to control outcomes, essentially, or perhaps, so maybe they did see something beyond 2012. But no matter what they did, they couldn't change the outcome of that thing that they saw beyond 2012. So it wasn't so much the future couldn't be predicted, but rather that they couldn't change it, like something was coming. That's how it kind of feels to me when I just examine everything that's going on. There is this panic, like evil is panicking right now, and they're making a lot of mistakes because they're no longer in control. And I would also add here that one of the things that I've noticed is that they're trying to turn us all, again, maybe this is their solution, where they're going, okay, what are we going to do? We can't change the outcome. Maybe we can just turn everybody into a computer program. Like they want us all to be the same. They seem to get really angry when we behave like humans. Like that's one of the things they're trying to triumph is our humanity. We talked about this a lot with the Charlie Kirk story, the reaction, how we felt icky, but they were like, what's wrong with you? How dare you feel icky? How dare you not like this? Don't you know this is what he would want? It's like their inability to defeat our humanity is angering to them. Now, something that was crucial, which was revealed about Project Looking Glass, was that the people who were in the room while this device was being operated, their conscious thoughts impacted the device, okay? So just imagine this. What they were thinking in the moment was changing future outcomes. Thoughts influenced future outcomes. That piece is super relevant to what we're going to discuss. And obviously that's pretty reminiscent of one of the themes of The Matrix. I just am going to assume everybody's seen that movie. If not, you should watch it because it was way ahead of its time.
Government operation to serve the elite class, to look into the future for the purposes of orchestrating the current state of being to shape whatever future they wanted. They could control the variables once they viewed the future to ensure that certain outcomes played out. But what they saw horrified them. They did not like what they saw in the future. And no matter how they tried to manipulate it, there was no future outcome that served them. What they saw was all possible timelines led to a convergence. Meaning that no matter what timeline they rode, no matter what option, there was only one outcome. And that outcome is light wins, and the ruling elite class is exposed and destroyed. That's what they saw that terrified them. And they tried and tried to punch as many holes through time and space as they could. That is what is going on with CERN. Trying to orchestrate or work out some other outcome. But there is no other outcome. There is no other outcome, is the problem. But what we are living through now, this chaos that we're living through now, is their final attempt to maintain control. These are their death rattles, because it is all falling apart, and there is nothing they can do about it. And they already knew, they already saw this was coming. So it's sort of a no holds bar fight now. They have nothing to lose. And they have to try everything they can think of. But there is no workaround to this situation, because light wins. So I mentioned that to bring your awareness to, we're in the middle of a psyop right now. This is a psychological operative that we're living through right now. This is part of their strategy. This psychological operative is designed to make us feel helpless, hopeless, powerless, defeated. That's how they want us to feel. That's what they want us to believe. They want the current system to stay in place, because they're the ones in control right now. They're the puppet masters. They want things to remain the same. And they want to dupe us into also holding on to the status quo. We have to let the system fall apart. We have to let the system crumble, because they're the ones running the system, and their time is over. So get your head in the game. Understand what is happening. Understand that when the world seems like it's falling apart, our governmental system seems like it's falling apart, when it seems like sanity has left the planet, this has to happen. This is part of the convergence. All of these wrongdoings, all of this evil has to be brought to light. And all these systems that have supported and housed and shielded these evil people, those systems have to come down. They have to come down. Don't fight for them to stay in place, because you are fighting for the elite to stay in power. We have to let the collapse happen. So, as we move through this chaos and uncertainty and uncomfortableness, remember, this is part of the convergence. This is what is supposed to be happening, and the outcome is light wins. There is only one possible outcome. There is no other outcome. The only possible outcome is light wins, and they know it. That we talked about are trapped on this side, and the conditions on this side of the portal are becoming increasingly unbearable. The light continues to get brighter and brighter and brighter. The consciousness of humanity continues to rise, and the consciousness of Earth herself is continuing to rise. So all of these conditions are making it increasingly difficult for these non-physical entities to survive. So I'm going to ask you a question. Of all the people on Earth right now, who are the ones generating the most negative energy? Who are the ones who are most evil, most abusive? Who is that group of people? It's not us, is it? So my friends, what I am saying is these beings are running out of energetic food sources. Those of us who are in the light are no longer viable food sources for them. At some point, these beings are going to realize that their masters are the greatest source of negative energy to consume. So these will turn on their masters and consume them. That is the outcome we are heading towards. So ultimately, if there is no judgment in a court of law, there is another kind of judgment and consequence taken place in the spiritual realm. And it is a terrible one. Another aspect. Some of these non-physical beings that we're discussing, some of them have anchored into particular family groups, and they have been given sacrifices and offerings, blood sacrifices and offerings. One of the things that is happening right now on Earth is those human harvesting efforts that have been happening are at a standstill right now. So these entities aren't being offered the same sacrifices and offerings as they've been accustomed to, and they're getting weaker. And the general population at large isn't a food source, a viable food source anymore. So besides needing those energetic food sources, they are angry with their masters because those offerings and sacrifices aren't coming with the same frequency and abundance as they once did. So there is anger stirring among these entities and their masters. So this is another reason why these entities are going to turn on their creators. They're going to turn on their masters and consume them.
Has been their leader for the last 50,000 years. Anu has two sons, Enlil and Enki, Enlil works with their scientists to figure out that they can save the planet if they spray microscopic gold particles into the atmosphere to reflect the sun's radiation coming through the non-existent ozone. The only problem is they don't have any gold. So they set out searching for planets who do and found Earth. They know Earth has life, but it's just a few primitive bipedal creatures who are less than half the size of the Anunnaki. So they figure if we have to, we can take them. So they send out a party of 300 Anunnaki and 600 Igigi headed to Earth with a mission of setting up a city and mining Earth's gold. The Igigi are actually a separate alien civilization that had been conquered by the Anunnaki many years earlier and made into their own personal slave force. So once they land on Earth in the area that we know today as Mesopotamia, the Anunnaki, under the rule of Anu's son, Enki, put the Igigi to work building a settlement called Eridu, giving them all of 7 days to do it. The Igigi are a little grumpy, but they get it done, and then move on to digging for that gold. And dig they did. For about 150,000 years, with ships arriving regularly to take the gold back to Nibiru. But it's not enough. They need more gold. Enki tells the Igigi, work harder. And what was terrible treatment before gets even worse in trying to get the Igigi to work harder. But the Igigi are done. Under their leader, Atrahasis, the Igigi proclaim, mine your own gold. They collapse the mines and attack the city. They lose and are quickly brought back under control, but the Igigi still refuse to go back to work. Enlil, who's like the top administrator guy, says they're treasonous, they all gotta go. But Enki, more of a science guy, says, slow down, we're not gonna kill them. I got a way better idea. Let's use the locals. They're not really smart enough right now, but if we give them a little of our DNA, I'm sure we can come up with something smart enough to work the mines, but not smart enough to ask questions. Takes a few tries to get it right, giving us a few mistakes along the way, like the Cyclops, but they managed to develop a race of hominid that we know today as Homo sapien, the first of which they name Adamu, which means first man in Sumerian. And if you haven't guessed already, how long ago did Homo sapiens enter the fossil record, according to mainstream archaeology? About 300,000 years ago, right about the time the Igigi call it quits. So, okay, problem solved. Now we have this custom-made local force to dig for us, and the mining continues. But it turns out that human nature isn't just for humans. I don't know if it's out of boredom or because after being here 150,000 years, he's starting to get the itch to settle down and start a family or what, but Enki starts eyeing the human women and starts messing around. Big no-no. But he does it anyway, and to no one's surprise, has a son named Adapa. So Adapa, being part Anunnaki and part human, is a little smarter than the other humans. And his lineage starts asking questions. Why are we mining gold? Gold must be important. I want some of that. Beginning our preoccupation as a species with gold as a valued commodity. And Adapa's offspring are not as docile as their forefathers. They fight back. And either through violence or attrition, the new aggressive human 2.0 thrives, and the more docile human 1.0 dies out. But human 2.0 turns out to be a little too successful. They overpopulate the cities and start riots over the lack of food. Enlil, ever the administrator, tries to control the violence by thinning the population through plagues and famine. Enki intercedes on their behalf, and a deal is struck that humans would have to leave the city of Eridu, including its lush and beautiful garden named Eden, and fend for themselves in the real world. So they do, and spread themselves out all over the planet. Now, some humans retain their relationships with the Anunnaki, producing hybrid offspring that sometimes, to humans at least, are giants. Some of them are still known today, giants like Gilgamesh, Hercules, and Samson, all pretty much good guys. On the flip side, relationships with the Igigi produce giants of the not-so-nice variety, like Goliath, who are a little more ill-tempered and tend to eat humans. But that is the state of affairs for a while until we roll around to 12 to 13,000 years ago. The Anunnaki have all the gold they need, and Nibiru is on course to swing back around for an easy pickup of any Anunnakians left on Earth. So they all pretty much say adios and thanks for all the gold, leaving humanity to fend for itself. However, the problem is that Nibiru doesn't exactly follow the same exact path every time it swings in for a visit. It varies a bit, sometimes further away, sometimes closer. And this pass is going to be a close one. So close that the gravitational pull between the two will be so strong that it's pretty much going to wreck Earth as we know it. Floods, earthquakes, you name it. Can you say Younger Dryas event? Enlil pretty much says, so what? They serve their purpose, and we have what we need. What's the issue? But Enki couldn't let the humans go so easily. Remember, he's the one who took a human wife and had human children. He kind of has a soft spot for us. Up until this point, we've been doing okay for ourselves, but we're not exactly a shining example. We're violent, rude, and pretty much a menace. So Enki proposes that one good man, Utnapishtim, his family, and a good representative sampling of all living animals be given at least a chance at survival. Utnapishtim builds an ark, loads everyone on it, and manages to ride out the gravitational fury that rages across the entire surface of the Earth and restart humanity from the 8 people aboard. Sound familiar? And just like the Nephilim story, giants repopulate in the Anunnaki version of events the same way, either through the genetics of the flood survivors or because of another visit from the Anunnaki. Because even though we managed to survive the flood and start over, all knowledge of past civilization is lost to time, and we are pretty much left to start from scratch. Except Nibiru makes another, not so catastrophic pass about 3,600 years ago. The Anunnaki use the opportunity to check in on us and make some tweaks to their creations, namely shortening our lifespans and decreasing our immunity from disease. But they also hung around for a while to reteach us some important skills before they left again, giving us back our knowledge of language, mathematics, and astronomy. Coincidentally enough, that last pass 3,600 years ago just happens to correspond to the rise of the Sumerian civilization. But whether you take the biblical approach or the Anunnaki approach, the final upshot is that we mere mortals now have giants living among us. Interesting that if you take the biblical approach for timing, it clocks out that the original visit by the Watchers was during the days of Jared, which puts the Nephilim on Earth from 3,500 to 3,000 BC, just slightly before the Sumerians started talking about the Anunnaki around 2,500 to 2,000 BC, which is also the same time frame that the Greeks were chattering about their Titans and Olympians. The Greeks don't throw their hat in the ring for having a true origin story, but their mythological history contains lots of giants that we will touch on in a bit, but I just wanted to throw that in there as an interesting coincidence. And an even more interesting coincidence is the fact that the Greeks have a flood myth too. And so does everyone else. There are over 100 cultures around the world that have so-called flood myths. And if you account for regional variations, that number goes up to more like 300. And consider that these 100 or more stories come from disparate cultures all across the globe. People who are not known to have had any contact with others. China, North America, India, Africa, Australia, Polynesia, all have stories of a major flood almost wiping out humanity. And while modern academia might consider these merely myths passed down over the ages by a multi-generational game of operator, the people in those cultures consider these stories as their actual history.
So the engineers come from the sky. They seed life on Earth and then return. And then at some point, they decide that humanity needs to be erased. Now, before I continue, I highly recommend you to read the Book of Enoch and come right back to this video. You just finished the Book of Enoch. Good. Proud of you. So in the book, as you all should have just read, a group called the Watchers descend to Earth. And in Mesopotamia myth, they're linked to what they called the Anunnaki. What's up, Joe Rogan? Sky gods who interact with humanity. The Watchers do three things. They descend, they give forbidden knowledge, and they corrupt creation. They teach humans metallurgy, warfare, cosmetics, magic, knowledge before humanity is spiritually ready. Sound familiar? In Prometheus, the engineers give us DNA. They give us the spark of life. But they also create this black liquid that this dude's about to drink. It's a substance that mutates, destroys, and creates monsters. Creation and corruption come from the same source. In Enoch, the Watchers create the Nephilim, hybrid giants born from heaven and earth. These beings destabilize the world, and judgment follows. And in Prometheus, human contact with the engineered DNA creates the Deacon, a hybrid proto-xenomorph lineage. Again, heaven and humanity equals destabilized creation. The key idea, my fellow viewers, is this. They're not gods. They're powerful beings inside the whole of creation, just like the Watchers in the Book of Enoch. They descend, they interfere, and they leave chaos behind. This, Prometheus, is one of the oldest stories in the book. Angels who were never supposed to come down and start something new. What is your favorite line in Prometheus? Drop your comments down below. And don't forget to follow, like, share, and favorite for more deep dives into the Watchers from Prometheus created all of us.
South African Police Service and the suspects that would involve Benjamin Mugabe, a 29-year-old son of the former president of Zimbabwe. We are told that police found it difficult to gain entrance in here, Ayanda, because no one was willing to cooperate from inside. But when they gained entrance, there was an altercation or a commotion between the police and the suspects, because apparently Benjamin Mugabe, the son of the former president of Zimbabwe, was refusing, was not allowing police to do their job, but he was arrested. You would remember our senior reporter, Crisenda Lewis, showing us exclusive visuals of Benjamin Mugabe being handcuffed and being escorted to a police van. And we were told that the suspects will appear at the Alexandra Magistrate Court on Monday. To answer your question, Oyanda, that particular gun that was used in that particular shooting yesterday has not been found. We are waiting for police officials to confirm if the search will continue today. But as you can see, as I'm moving out of shot, our video journalist Lireko showing you some of the police vehicles. The car that you see with blue lights on is the K9 unit. Those are the ones who are using sniffer dogs to gather evidence. They are outside. They have been outside since from 6:30. Unfortunately, they can't talk to us, because they are not allowed to speak to the media. As you can see, these gates are locked. But what we know is that police will come here today to continue with their search. Remember, yesterday they had to thoroughly search a pool using their divers. But we are told that they did not find the gun. Remember, it was late yesterday, and we were told by those who are in the know that that particular pool was dirty, and it was extremely difficult for the members of the South African Police Service to do their search thoroughly. So we are told by our sources that they will come here in numbers so that they can continue to search for that particular gun.
Crime. That's very important. So there's little evidence that the Firearms Control Act causes a decline in crime. Just remember that.
The Firearms Control Act is relevant to less than 5% of crimes reported to the police. And they go on to say, in essence, and I'm summarizing very briefly the report, better policing reduces crime. Firearms Control Act itself, on its own, is not an effective crime reduction tool.
Can we say that even louder? And this is the problem with the government wanting to attack this legislation, this act, and amend it. There's nothing wrong with the act or this legislation itself, but everything is wrong with SAPS, the legal system, all that sector. That is the actual problem. We've been saying this for years, and this report confirms it.
This is the report that the Secretariat wants to suppress. They say, oh, it's not peer reviewed. Well, then your mortality stats, your licensing stats, and goodness knows everything else is also not peer reviewed. So people, they don't like this because what they're telling you is a lie.
So he goes on to explain that this report is not public. He actually got it through the requests of access to information. But before, it's not like the Secretariat or whoever had the report was willing to give it, you know, immediately. No, he had to follow up quite a few times until eventually they gave it, because they were trying to suppress it, because the report exposes the lies that the government is trying to tell you, that we need to regulate more, that we need to amend this law, and people cannot own firearms for self-defense because it's dangerous and criminals want to steal those guns. No, again, you are diverting the actual issue. The issue is SAPS. We have seen this, we have heard this, it's been reported on, and the legal system.